In the modern world, the concept of freedom is often celebrated as the pinnacle of human achievement. Western societies, in particular, pride themselves on their ability to grant individuals the liberty to live as they please, unburdened by the constraints of tradition or religious doctrine. Yet, beneath this glorified notion of freedom lies a complex web of rules and regulations that govern every aspect of life, often without individuals even realizing it. What appears to be personal liberty may, in fact, be nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. The Western system, while promoting freedom on the surface, subtly binds individuals in ways they may not fully comprehend, until those bindings are shattered. This illusory freedom weakens individuals by encouraging them to surrender to their desires under the guise of personal liberty. This notion of freedom is misleading, because complete freedom is impossible. The abandonment of religion in Western societies has created a fragmented society of strangers, where people no longer share a common unifying force. In the past, religion provided universal laws that applied to everyone, offering a shared sense of purpose and morality. Now, in the absence of religion, people prioritize their personal desires and spaces, contributing to society's fragmentation. To maintain order, the system intervenes by creating laws that cater to people's diverse desires. However, these laws also restrict individuals from fully pursuing their desires, because allowing total freedom would destabilize society. The system, in an attempt to find a unifying force without religion, has implemented a vast array of rules to manage the different personal beliefs and preferences that exist in this society of strangers. This tension between freedom and control reveals a deeper issue. When a society emphasizes freedom as its primary value, it becomes harder to enforce rules consistently. Western societies, particularly the United States, often struggle to balance promoting freedom while imposing restrictions. The more freedom is celebrated, the more hidden rules are necessary to manage behavior. For example, a company may claim to value individual freedom but enforce strict dress codes, creating a disconnect between the stated values and the lived experience of its employees. This contradiction highlights how freedom in the West is often more of an illusion than a reality, as true freedom would destabilize society. Conformity to established rules and social norms becomes essential to maintain order, ensuring that despite individual differences, people adhere to a common framework that keeps society running smoothly. Western freedom is fundamentally freedom from God and divine laws, which ultimately results in enslavement to human-made laws and systems. This system doesn't match how it is presented. Westerners are promised freedom, but what they experience is often a sense of irrelevance. It's like being in a prison yard. There may be choices, but those choices are confined by the system's rules. People might feel free to choose personal lifestyles, such as watching endless TV, drinking alcohol, or dressing in unconventional ways, like a man in high heels and makeup. However, these freedoms are superficial and do not genuinely contribute to personal empowerment or societal well-being. The system allows these trivial freedoms as a way for people to waste their time without disrupting societal norms. The system values individuals only when their actions serve its goals, such as economic activities or voting. This limited freedom creates the appearance of respecting personal rights. But in reality, it subtly guides individuals toward pursuits that don't truly benefit their lives. If the system truly valued freedom, it would focus on opportunities that enhance people's lives, rather than allowing inconsequential activities. For example, the idea of men dressing like women in high heels and makeup may be seen as a form of personal expression. However, this freedom offers little meaningful contribution to the individual's growth or to the well-being of society. It reflects a superficial liberty that doesn't advance the man's character or society's collective progress. Similarly, revealing clothing for women is another freedom that, while celebrated as a personal choice, often puts them at risk. Instead of being taught to protect their most valuable possession, their bodies, women are subtly encouraged to prioritize material belongings, like jewelry, or even trivial things like cell phones. This freedom, which neglects the importance of modesty, exposes them to potential dangers such as sexual assault. Similarly, in many Western countries, the sudden transition into adulthood at 18 gives young people the illusion of maturity without adequately preparing them for adult responsibilities. At this age, individuals gain access to adult privileges such as drinking alcohol, engaging in intimate relationships,
order in the court,
and even the legal authority to challenge their parents. However, this shift from being a minor to an adult overnight often fails to reflect their actual readiness for adult duties. Many 18-year-olds still rely on their parents and struggle with the realities of work, financial management, and independence. The system creates an illusion of maturity simply because the law dictates it, despite the individual's ongoing dependency. Alcohol consumption is another instance where the illusion of freedom is apparent. People are allowed to drink and get drunk in bars or at home, wasting their valuable time under the guise of freedom. Yet, to prevent the harmful effects of this freedom, the system imposes restrictions like prohibiting drunk driving and public drinking. These rules reveal that total freedom is unworkable, and that the system must intervene to protect people from the very liberties the system allows. These freedoms, far from empowering individuals, often weaken them, leading to a society where personal desires are pursued at the cost of true, personal, and societal development. The Western system heavily relies on rules and institutional regulations to control its society of strangers and maintain order. people follow these rules, not necessarily because they believe in them, but because they are bound by necessity. The system's rules dictate behavior, and disobedience often leads to punishment to ensure compliance. Without these regulations, individuals might lose control of themselves, as the system's control over behavior is a crucial factor in maintaining societal order. The United States, often seen as the freest country, is a prime example of this contradiction. It has more laws and regulations than any other nation, and imprisons a higher percentage of its population. Despite its emphasis on individual freedom, the overwhelming number of rules reveals that true freedom is heavily restricted. If the system and its institutions were to collapse, the ensuing chaos would starkly reveal how deeply people relied on these rules to maintain order. Without laws and structures, individuals would face a brutal reality check, exposing the illusion of their freedom. They would see that their sense of liberty was not genuine, but a facade maintained by the very regulations they adhered to. With nothing holding them accountable, men might not only dress and behave like women, but even walk nude alongside them, unconcerned with any sense of decency. People would drink as much as they want, getting drunk wherever they please. The collapse of the system would unleash darker impulses. Sexual assaults could happen simply for amusement, and violence, even murder, might become commonplace. The lack of any higher authority would lead to anarchy, revealing that society's stability depended entirely on the rules that once controlled them. The collapse would unmask the harsh truth. They were not free, but caged by an intricate web of rules and controls. Only when the system falls apart would they truly grasp how imprisoned they were, discovering the extent of their confinement in a way that shocks and astonishes. The descent into chaos depicted in the movie The Purge offers a striking parallel to the potential collapse of Western society, when the government suspends all laws for one night, allowing people to act without consequence, where the absence of laws and institutions exposes the fragility of the perceived freedom people enjoy. The Purge mirrors the potential collapse of Western society, where the rules and institutions that keep order would vanish, exposing the illusion of freedom that people believe they have. Just as in The Purge, where individuals are free to commit crimes like murder and assault. Without fear of punishment, a collapsed Western society would see a similar breakdown of moral boundaries. People would indulge in their darkest desires, drunkenness, violence, and even sexual assault, because there would be no accountability. Both scenarios reflect the idea that freedom, as portrayed in Western society, is a fragile construct maintained only by the system's rules. Without these controls, as in The Purge, the reality of human nature would surface, revealing that people's sense of liberty was never genuine, but always dependent on the structure that contained them. The film's depiction of people turning to lawlessness highlights how easily Western society could crumble into chaos if its institutions fail. Movies like The Purge show how much the West actually distrusts itself with freedom, fearing that people might not behave properly if given complete freedom. What distinguishes the systems in Muslim countries is that they naturally emerge from Islamic beliefs, rather than being artificially imposed. These systems are not created or influenced by external forces. Instead, they arise from the fundamental principle of submission to the Creator. The principles and practices guiding Muslim societies are inherently derived from Islamic teachings, making them a natural part of the religious and cultural framework. This contrasts with Western systems, which, despite their emphasis on freedom, often lack deep moral grounding and are disconnected from profound principles. In Muslim countries, individuals naturally adhere to these laws. There's no need for trickery or pressure. Muslims don't need to be brainwashed or misled to ensure that they follow Islamic laws, because they already willingly adhere to them.
Silence in the court!
They genuinely believe in those laws, even if the laws of their country or region do not mandate them. Compliance with Islamic principles is a voluntary and integral part of their faith. This compliance with Islamic rules comes naturally from understanding and accepting their values, demonstrating a deep, intrinsic commitment to the Sharia, regardless of external pressures. This intrinsic adherence is often challenging for many Westerners to fully grasp. Although some might advocate for the enforcement of Sharia law by local governments in Muslim countries, many Muslims continue to follow these principles, even when they are not legally mandated. In most Muslim countries, practices like alcohol consumption, wearing the hijab and prayer may not be enforced by law, yet Muslims choose to adhere to Sharia law because it is fundamental to their beliefs. Just as Western societies have their own system of laws, Sharia law serves as the guiding framework for Muslims, deeply rooted in their faith and personal commitment. Muslims exemplify self-discipline by carrying God's laws with them wherever they go, even in non-Muslim societies. They follow Sharia law, engaging in daily prayers, abstaining from alcohol, wearing the hijab, dressing modestly, and maintaining respectful distances between genders, regardless of local legal requirements. Their adherence to these principles is self-imposed and deeply rooted in their beliefs, demonstrating that they do not rely on external forces or legal systems to enforce these practices. Globally, regardless of a society's religious or secular nature, Muslims cannot form a society of strangers because they have not abandoned religion nor sought freedom from it. The concept of Ummah unites Muslims worldwide, transcending ethnic, national and cultural differences through their shared adherence to Sharia law and faith in Allah. This unifying bond ensures that Muslims, no matter their nationality or society, remain connected and integrated by the same set of divine principles. Ummah fosters a profound sense of brotherhood and provides a consistent framework for both personal and public conduct. Sharia law, along with faith in Allah, binds Muslims together, ensuring that they are never truly isolated or detached, but always part of a cohesive and interconnected community called Ummah. In the event of a catastrophic collapse in a Muslim-majority country, the core practices of Islamic life would remain steadfast despite the chaos. For example, even in times of severe conflict or destruction, Muslims would continue their daily prayers, adhering to their religious obligations. Abstaining from alcohol and maintaining modest dress would persist as central aspects of their lives. social norms would still emphasize mutual assistance, refraining from sexual misconduct, and observing fasting during Ramadan. The presence of Allah and the enduring nature of Sharia law would ensure that these principles guide behavior regardless of external circumstances. Take the example of Palestine's Gaza. Despite ongoing war waged by the occupying radical extremists and the severe conditions over the past 1 year, the adherence to Islamic practices remains strong among its residents. Even in the face of frequent attacks by the occupying radical extremists, shortages of essential resources, and significant destruction by IGF, Palestinians in Gaza continue to uphold their religious commitments and social norms. For instance, daily prayers remain a central part of life for many Gazans, with mosques, in whatever remaining condition, still serving as vital places for worship and community support. Observance of Ramadan, including fasting and communal prayers, continues with devotion, even amidst the hardships of blockade and the war waged by the occupying radical extremists. The prohibition of alcohol, a fundamental aspect of Islamic law, is strictly observed and modest dress codes are maintained despite the challenging circumstances. Additionally, the spirit of mutual aid and charity, key components of Islamic teaching, is evident in Palestine's Gaza. Many residents engage in acts of charity and support for one another, despite the dire conditions. This includes sharing limited resources and providing aid to those in greater need, reflecting the enduring commitment to Islamic values and principles. These practices illustrate that, even in extreme conditions, similar to a post-apocalyptic scenario, the adherence to Islamic principles remains a constant. The strength of these values provides a stabilizing influence, ensuring that while Muslims may face significant challenges, the moral and social framework established by Sharia law endures, preserving a sense of order and continuity in their way of life. In the Western world, Muslims often find themselves in an environment that feels like a post-apocalyptic scenario due to the widespread freedom to engage in behaviors that are contrary to Sharia law. Alcohol is readily available. Immodest dress is common and accepted. Sexual activities are openly pursued without repercussions. And religious practices, such as prayer and fasting, are not enforced. Despite this, Muslims living in the West maintain their adherence to Sharia law in their personal lives. They continue to follow Islamic principles by abstaining from alcohol, dressing modestly, engaging in regular prayers, and observing fasting during Ramadan. Their commitment to Sharia law remains strong regardless of the surrounding cultural norms and legal framework. Thus, the discipline and order in a Muslim's life are self-imposed through their commitment to God's laws, illustrating the contrast between the need for external regulation in secular societies and the internal discipline fostered by adherence to Sharia law. As we've examined, different societies maintain order in unique ways, with adherence to personal beliefs playing a key role in shaping behavior. In Western societies, where personal liberty and freedom are highly emphasized, the concept of freedom is often portrayed as limitless. However, this idealized freedom is inherently constrained by laws and social norms that regulate behavior to maintain order. The very concept of freedom relies on the existence of constraints. Without these limits, the notion of freedom itself becomes meaningless. True freedom, as envisioned in theory, is an impossible concept, because it would require the absence of all constraints, which is inherently contradictory. In practical terms, every society must impose some level of regulation and control to function effectively. Thus, while Western societies champion personal liberty, they still operate within a framework of rules and restrictions. Conversely, for Muslims adhering to Sharia law, this set of principles offers a consistent and self-imposed framework for living, regardless of external societal norms. This adherence provides a sense of order and discipline, showcasing how true freedom, in a practical sense, is not about the absence of constraints, but the presence of a structured set of guidelines that people willingly follow. In essence, the concept of absolute freedom is an illusion because it cannot exist without constraints. True freedom is thus bound by the very limits that are imposed to maintain societal order and personal discipline.